To the spotlight next week. Are Prince Harry and Meghan Markle spiralling? Which royal birthdays did we celebrate this week? One of them is not what you'd expect. And what does the announcement of a new royal baby say about how the royals are conducting their business? All this and more on another unmissable episode.
Harry's gone broke. $20 million? Gone. And the people who were supposed to tell you that, they stayed quiet for a very long time. Now here's the thing though, this isn't just about money. This is about a man who walked away from one of the most powerful institutions on earth, burned every bridge on the way out, and is now watching the whole carefully constructed fantasy start to crack. And you already knew something was off, didn't you? You've known for a while. Let's start with the number that nobody in mainstream media wants to sit with. Over $20 million inherited from Princess Diana herself. Gone! Not invested, not donated, gone! Spent on security detail, a mortgage on a Montecito mansion they don't own outright, gardeners, chefs, flights, a lifestyle engineered entirely around looking like you belong somewhere you don't. And the person who exposed this wasn't some tabloid nobody, it was Dan Wakeford.
Her first official visit, working visit, for 3.5 years, because she last went to Boston with Prince William in 2022, and her first solo visit for 4 years, because it was in February of that year that she went to Denmark. And of course, the following year she started suffering ill health, and then we know it resulted in her very serious abdominal surgery in early 2024, and then her...
Former editor of People magazine. And if you know anything about how the Sussex PR machine works, you know People magazine has basically been their personal newsletter for years, their in-house propaganda arm. So when that guy breaks ranks and says the money's gone, you sit up, you pay attention, because that doesn't happen by accident. Now, before I get to what's really going on here, I need you to understand something about the numbers being thrown around publicly. 60 million from Netflix, 20 million from Spotify, 10 million from the Australia visit. Sounds like a fortune, right? But here's the part nobody talks about. How much...
Expect the possibility that they could go there during their key 250th anniversary of independence. But wherever she goes, I think this is a great start. The fact she's carrying it out on her own, I think, is significant. It shows, she wants to continue her work. She feels passionately about the work with young children. So it's exciting news all round, I'd say.
I think it's a good point, actually, Richard, that this is something that she's doing on behalf of one of her own charities, and I think the next step will be maybe doing something on behalf
of that actually landed in their pocket? The Netflix figure, a lot of that was production budget. 100 people worked on With Love Meghan. 100 people. And the Spotify deal? They fulfilled exactly one series of one podcast before Spotify didn't come back for more. Experts are putting their actual take from Spotify at maybe 2 or 3 million, not 20. And the Polo documentary that was supposed to be their great Netflix comeback? Spiked. Done.
We still haven't ruled it out as a possibility. And William himself told us in Cape Town last year that he expected her to pick up on foreign royal trips this year. So fingers crossed we'll see more. Sadly, I won't be in Italy with her though, because I've got family issues I've got to deal with. But
there's no next big deal waiting in the wings. The income dried up and the spending never slowed down. And this is the part that gets me personally. Actually, let me rephrase that. What bothers me isn't the spending. People spend money. What bothers me is the posture, the performance of it all. They're in Montecito, neighbors with Oprah and Gwyneth Paltrow, throwing off the image of Hollywood royalty, while behind closed doors, the inheritance Diana left her son is essentially gone. Diana, the woman the whole world mourned. Her legacy, the money she left to protect her boy, spent trying to fake a status that was never going to be earned. I want to slow down here for just a second, because I think about the people watching this. Regular people, working people, people who budget for groceries and worry about their kids' futures. And you're watching a man who was born into unimaginable privilege, handed a royal title, handed Diana's fortune, handed Netflix deals and Spotify deals and speaking fees, and he still couldn't make it work. Not because the money wasn't there, but because the ego wouldn't let him live.
Families and young people, and there were some great moments. She's quite geeky on the quiet, Catherine, and I think people don't expect that about her. And she was particularly fascinated by an experiment they were doing with a little 3-year-old boy, Mikhail, and he had one of these kind of caps on that had kind of electrodes that were measuring his brain waves, and they were watching his interaction with his mother and seeing how it changed the brain waves, and then
Within it, there's something deeply wrong about that, and I think you feel it too. Now here's where it gets interesting. Kate, Princess Catherine, one of the most composed, loyal, dignified women in that entire royal world. You know, just like I know, that she doesn't speak carelessly. She doesn't react publicly. She absorbs. She endures. So when sources close to the palace...
You know, because they know it's very bad news, that it's bad for the royal family. And so each time the daughters are seen, it just reminds people of their parents. And I think for the good, the long-term good of the monarchy, it'd be much better if the royal family kept them at arm's length, at least for some time. So I do think that's a mistake.
Speaking of arm's length, this is something that's an unusual quirk of our constitution and the way our monarchy works.
Confirm she is furious. That word means something. Her breaking point wasn't some tabloid drama. It was a BBC interview where Harry sat down expecting to give a 5-minute soundbite and instead went on for 30 minutes, ranting, raving, claiming the establishment stitched him up, and then saying about his own father, a man battling cancer. I don't know how long he's got. Think about that for a moment. That's not grief talking. That's not fear talking. That's a man weaponizing his dying father's illness.
And other politicians might want to try and take opportunities and advantage of that.
yeah, I mean, if the principle of hereditary monarchy comes with certain givens, and I think there is a feeling that once you start trying to kind of nibble at the edges and unpick bits of it, where will that whole spool unravel to? That said, I do agree with Richard. I do think it does seem weird, and I was with Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh, yesterday at the Buckingham Palace garden party.
On camera for leverage. Catherine has walked her own cancer journey. She and Charles bonded through that, and she watched Harry throw Charles's diagnosis into a media interview like a chess piece. We all knew Catherine had limits. We just didn't know we'd find out what they were, like this. And William? People want to frame William's reaction as paranoia, that he thinks there are spies and moles inside the palace feeding information to Harry and Meghan. But is that really so hard to believe? The Sussex PR machine never sleeps. It's strategic. It's targeted. Reports surfaced describing Harry and Meghan as running the Montecito branch of the House of Windsor. There are politicians in Britain actively pushing for their return. There's an establishment agenda here.
And was asked for a statement, as was his personal protection officer. Gonna go back to the panel now, and I should say that before we were talking about this, before we got this serious news, we were talking about the happy news of Princess Charlotte turning 11, so we will have a special montage.
And William can see it.
The Norfolk area of East England. Local police arrested the suspect on suspicion of a public order offence in the village of Wolferton last night, and he remained in custody in King's Lynn today. The man was said to have been waiting in a car and started running at the 66-year-old former Duke of York, who had been walking his dogs at about 7:30 p.m. The man was apparently agitated and shouted at him from 50 yards away.
Who reportedly has no backbone when it comes to pressure, sat down with Harry face to face last September. Things are being leaked, lines are being crossed, and William is watching it happen in real time, while the palace staff he's supposed to trust feeds the machine. And then there's the armed security demand, the one Harry keeps fighting for in Britain. He travels to Ukraine, he goes to Mexico. He's been in some of the most genuinely dangerous places on the planet without incident. But apparently Mayfair is where the threat lives. Here's the truth. It's not about safety. It was never about safety. It's about status. It's the motorcade, the helicopters.
Families sort of organise these things, because what we have with William and Catherine is they're very open about it. We have the lovely pictures of their children on their birthdays, and as you say, when we see them we think, oh my goodness, they've grown, because it's quite a while since we've seen them and they're growing up quickly. But Harry and Meghan take a different approach, where they're not showing the faces of their children. We see these endless shots. So if you take, for example, this week was Prince Archie's birthday.
The police outriders. It's the court of King Harry. it's a flex. And that tells you everything about who this man actually is underneath the carefully managed image of the wounded, compassionate, truth-telling prince. 600 pages in spare, attacking his own family, allowing claims of racism against unnamed royals to go out under his watch, Meghan mocking the late Queen Elizabeth in a Netflix documentary that Harry could have stopped. Every single one of those decisions was Harry's. Meghan gets the headlines, but Harry signed off on all.
I'm happy with that, but equally I understand with the Waleses, their children hold a unique role in public life, and George will one day be king, so they have to navigate it slightly differently. But I agree with Richard. I don't understand if you make a choice that you don't want your children's faces to be seen in public, then why post a picture of them at all? And I think you're right, Richard. It's because they want to keep an interest in them from a commercial perspective as well.
To be fair and balanced about this, we also saw it this week with...
Of it, every single time. So here's where we are. The money's gone, the deals are dead, the family relationships are burned or burning, the armed security demand is almost certainly going to be denied, and the only move left is to come crawling back to the institution he spent years.
Nor George nor Louis, but someone altogether hairier. Rebecca, who is the hairy celebrant?
That's quite an introduction, Luke. I'm tempted to go off-piste, but I won't. Welcome to everyone to Otto, who I think...
Publicly dismantling. And the worst part is, there are people in power who will let him do it, who will roll out the carpet and pretend none of it happened, because that's how the elite protect their own. So I want to ask you something directly. Now that you know the full picture, now that the finances are exposed and the manipulation is documented and the pattern is undeniable, do you think the palace should take him back? Or has the damage Harry caused to his family, to Diana's memory, and to the truth finally gone too far to forgive? Tell me in the comments, because this conversation isn't over, not even close.